Welcome to A Mason's Work, the podcast where we review Masonic symbols and illustrate how they can be used to solve problems in everyday life. With your host, Brian Mattox, a proud member of the Craftsman Online Media Network.
So continuing with our evaluation of the principle of correspondence, or as above, so below, or a practical application of the frequency illusion, whatever language you want to use here, we want to start with the behavioral application. So as we're talking about the interplay between the inner and the outer, or as within, so without, you can collect data and information and insight from both sides of that perspective. When you look across your behavior, that should tell you something of the way you think or the way you feel. And if you look across the way you feel, it's very likely you'll be able to find those behaviors being expressed, those feelings being expressed in behavior. At a behavioral level, the as above, so below, as within, so without, or the principle correspondence becomes a meaningful mirror for you to see the things and the relationships that may not be as easily visible as you might sort of normally expect. People don't simply overeat, for example, because they're hungry. Now, you'll find plenty of examples, I'm sure, online of someone who overeats because they're hungry, but that's not the mission here. The understanding is that the vast majority of the things that we do behaviorally are largely the function of an unexamined cause or causal series or relationship or chain. The principle of correspondence allows us to start to examine that behavioral chain of correspondence so we can get insight into our current behavior and our future behavior. This is pretty fundamental. When you are looking through, and right now is a good time of the year, if you're listening to this podcast later in the year, this was recorded right around the time of the new year, you'll find that a lot of folks right now are looking to change their thought processes, their behavioral processes. And they'll term that in the form of outcomes. I want to lose weight. I want to become financially more responsible. I want to, travel more. I want to do the things that I want to do, whatever those might be. But without taking the time to understand the behavioral mechanics here, the corresponding causes of your outward behavior, focusing on the outcomes themselves doesn't yield a sustainable change. It doesn't turn into something useful. So the principle of correspondence allows us to start to reflect on the outcomes we're trying to create, the behaviors that create those outcomes, and the thought processes and the emotional processes that sort of chain together to make all of that happen. Now, again, like all of these things, we discussed this in yesterday's episode, this isn't necessarily a factual truth. We're talking about a subjective experience. The thing you did last week may or may not have a direct interior corresponding sort of referent or cause. However, in vast moving swaths, it's a useful lens to try and apply to figure out what's going on, why you're doing the things you're doing, and how you might go about resolving some of the outcomes that you don't like. There are things that you can't get around, right? This is not a useful tool to examine survival behaviors, right? If you are startled by a bear in the woods, this is not, sitting down and going, well, I'm startled by a bear in the woods. There must be some internal cause by this. That's probably less useful application. So when we talk about the skillful application at this, at the behavioral level, it's really for examining behavior patterns and for examining thought and emotional patterns. And in that way, you should be able to use this behaviorally to help you move your objectives forward and maybe get unstuck in the places where it's easier to kind of just go into autopilot. This level of examination should yield some benefit.
The views represented in this podcast are those of the speaker alone and are not representative of any grand or subordinate lodge.
Hi, Brian here. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions or guidance for further episodes you'd like to see or hear, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at masonswork.com, and we will try and incorporate your suggestions into a future recording. Thanks.
Freemasonry teaches us that the true work is within, a lifelong journey of reflection, discipline, and discovery. At A Mason's Work, we help Masons bring out their best selves through meaningful self-inquiry and symbolic practice. From personal reflection to lodge engagement, we offer tools that turn symbols into action. Visit us at amasonswork.com. The work is within. The time is now.